You are tired in a way sleep does not fix. You have done the work, the journaling, the discipline, the 5-year plan color-coded and laminated in your mind. And still, there is a ceiling, glass, invisible. You can see clean through it. You cannot get past it. Today, we are not reading your future. We are auditing your present. 3 questions. No mysticism for its own sake. Just a deck used the way a clinician uses a mirror to show you the parts of your own mind you stopped looking at years ago. Because looking cost too much at the time. Question 1. What exactly have you repressed? And what is it costing you, right now, to keep it sealed in the basement of your identity? Question 2. How is that repression already running your life? Quietly, financially, romantically, without ever asking your permission. Question 3. What do you do about it, starting today, for the next 90 days, so the basement stops being a liability and becomes a vault? Here is the premise. Sit with it before a single card turns. Your conscious mind is the press release. It is the polished version written for an audience, including you. Your shadow is the actual ledger, the real numbers, the real transactions, the ones nobody published. Today, we read the ledger. I want to be precise about what shadow means here, because the word has been worn smooth by overuse. It is not your trauma. It is not your sins. It is simply every trait, desire, and instinct you once had that got filed as unacceptable. And that filing system is still running in the background, billing you. Let's open the basement. Every psyche has a basement. Not a metaphorical inconvenience, an actual storage facility for the traits you learned, early and efficiently, were not welcome upstairs. Here is the mechanism in clinical terms. A child does not repress a trait because the trait is dangerous. A child represses a trait because expressing it once cost too much. A withdrawn hand, a sharpened tone, a too quiet room. The lesson lands before the language does. By adulthood, you don't even remember filing the trait away. You only feel its absence, a hole shaped exactly like the thing you now need most, and somehow cannot access. The Knight of Swords is the first item in the inventory. He is raw, unsanded ambition, the desire to move fast, cut through consensus, say the unpopular true thing, and let the room recalibrate around you. Most of you exiled this years ago. You renamed it. Aggressive, too much, not very nice. What you actually did was fire your own advocate and replace him with a committee that requires unanimous written consent before you're allowed to do anything mildly bold. That committee is why you reread the email 4 times before sending it. The knight did not vanish. He is in the basement, fully armed, furious that you keep apologizing for things that never required an apology. The 8 of Swords is what guards that door. This card is usually read as feeling trapped, and that reading is lazy. Look again at the figure. The blindfold is loose. The swords are arranged with visible gaps. The trap is permeable. This is not imprisonment. This is a story you keep renewing because the story however miserable, is familiar. And a nervous system raised on inconsistency will always choose familiar over safe, because it was never taught the difference. You are not stuck. You are signing a new lease, monthly, on a structure you could leave any ordinary Tuesday. The Four of Swords and the Six of Swords are a pair, and they expose two different repressed exits from conflict. The Four is enforced stillness, your system choosing collapse over confrontation, pulling the shades down rather than have the fight. If you are the person who gets mysteriously, almost medically exhausted right before a hard conversation, this is your card. Your body is staging a sit-in your mind refuses to authorize. The Six is the quieter cousin, leaving before resolution, slipping out on the boat while the shoreline is still arguing without you. If your pattern is the long goodbye nobody saw coming, out of relationships, jobs, entire cities, you did not repress conflict itself. You repressed your right to stay and be disliked for a while. That is a very specific, very valuable capital you've buried. Because the ability to remain in a room while someone is unhappy with you is quite literally a leadership skill.
Justice is the internal tribunal. And this is the card people most consistently misread as fairness. It is not fairness. It is verdict. Somewhere in your formation, a court convened. Parents, teachers, a school hallway, a culture, and ruled on which parts of you were permissible. You did not get a lawyer. You got a sentence, delivered before you had any language to cross-examine it. And one trait, very likely still serving that sentence, is your hunger for raw, undisguised power. More money, more recognition, more room in the world than feels modest. Wanting more got ruled greedy before you were old enough to object. You have spent years appealing a case you never agreed to lose, and you've been paying the court costs the entire time. This is the quiet killer. Stay with me for one more, because this one doesn't look dark at all. The Three of Cups, last on this inventory, is the most quietly devastating, because it does not look dark at all. It is joy, celebration, being seen, specifically inside a group, specifically for something you did well. A striking number of high-functioning adults have repressed the need for collective recognition and rebranded it, calmly, convincingly, as, "I don't need other people's validation." That sentence sounds like maturity. It frequently is a cover story for an old humiliation. Being celebrated once, having it go visibly wrong, and quietly deciding never to need the room again. Hyper-independence is rarely a personality trait. It is, far more often, a withdrawal from a market that burned you a single time, a long time ago. Here is the structural problem with all 5 of these exiles, and I want this point to land cleanly. Repression is not storage. Storage is free. Repression has rent. Keeping a trait exiled requires continuous psychic maintenance, the equivalent of running a security system around a vault, around the clock, to guard something you've convinced yourself is dangerous to release. That is the leak, not a single loss taken once. A subscription charged monthly for the rest of your life, unless you cancel it. So now you have the inventory, 5 exiled assets, each carrying rent. The real question was never whether they exist. You've likely recognized at least 2 of them already, with the specific, uncomfortable clarity of being named correctly. The real question is what they have been doing, unsupervised, in the dark, for the last 20 years. And I'll tell you exactly how this is already costing you money, this week, not someday. That's question 2. Here is how the basement runs your life without ever asking for your sign-off. Every single day. The mechanism is called projection, and I want to give you the clinical version, not the meme version. A trait you cannot own in yourself becomes a trait you can only recognize in someone else, usually amplified, usually in someone you're inexplicably drawn to, or inexplicably repelled by. Your shadow does not disappear when you exile it. It goes looking for a host who will express it for you, so you can have a relationship with the trait at a safe, deniable distance. This is the actual mechanism behind the same type of person reappearing in your life, with a different face and the identical wound. The Queen of Pentacles governs resourcing, not only money, but the broader skill of generating, holding, and circulating value, material and emotional. Here is her shadow shape. You became extraordinary at resourcing everyone except yourself. The friend everyone calls at 11 at night. The employee who quietly absorbs the workload nobody officially assigned. The partner who manages the household's entire emotional climate without being asked. You did this so competently that nobody, including you, noticed the queen had been outsourced. You are running her entire court for other people and drawing no salary from it. The 7 of Cups is the card of unfiled desire. Too many options, all of them faintly intoxicating, none of them examined. If you suspect you sabotage yourself financially or romantically, look here first. Indecision is rarely a character flaw. It is what happens when half of your actual desires were exiled to the basement, and only the acceptable half are permitted to vote on the outcome. You are not choosing between 2 real options. You are choosing between one real option and several decoys, generated by the part of you still negotiating for permission to want what it actually wants. The world is the ceiling, and I want to dismantle the cheerful version of this card you've probably already heard. The world is completion, but completion of a closed loop, not necessarily an open door. If you keep almost arriving, almost getting the promotion, almost landing the relationship, almost hitting the number, and the cycle quietly resets without explanation, this card is diagnosing a closed loop, not a curse. Something in the architecture you've built returns you to the starting line right before full integration would occur. Because full integration would require keeping a level of power you have not yet given yourself formal permission to hold. The ceiling is not external. It is the loop's design, and you are both the architect and the tenant. The Magician is the most uncomfortable card in this entire reading, because he is not your potential. He is your current, fully available capability. Wand, cup, sword, and pentacle. Every tool already within reach on the table in front of you. The shadow story that keeps him dormant usually sounds like, if I use all of this and it still doesn't work, I'll have no excuse left. Staying slightly underpowered is not an accident. It is a strategy. It preserves the alibi. The Hanged Man is suspended perspective, and his shadow form is a very specific kind of stuck, watching your own pattern from above, diagnosing it with total accuracy, and still not turning the one angle that would change it. You can be extremely self-aware and completely unmoved by that awareness. Insight without inversion is just a more articulate way of staying exactly where you are. Death, predictably misread as catastrophe, is simply the bill arriving for an identity you have outgrown but kept paying maintenance on.
Every month you delay a necessary ending, a job, a relationship, a self-concept. You pay what I'll call the emotional tax, the daily cost of performing a version of yourself that is already structurally obsolete. It shows up as fatigue sleep does not fix, a low-grade dread on Sunday evenings, irritability with people who did nothing wrong. That is not a mood. That is interest, accruing, on a debt you have not yet acknowledged on paper.
The Ace of Pentacles closes this section, and it may be the cruelest card here, precisely because it is an opportunity. Small, concrete, real, that keeps appearing and keeps slipping through your hand at the exact moment you would have to hold it. This is shadow sabotage in its purest, least theatrical form. The unconscious allows opportunity to approach right up to the threshold, then engineers a delay, a sudden doubt, an urgent distraction, precisely when commitment is required. Self-sabotage rarely announces itself with drama. It dresses almost always as practicality, as bad timing, as just not feeling ready yet. Add it up and look at what you're actually carrying. A Queen of Pentacles running on empty. A Seven of Cups, full of decoys outvoting your real desire. A world that loops instead of completing. A magician left untouched on the table. A hanged man who sees clearly and still doesn't move. A death bill, unpaid, with interest. An ace that keeps slipping through your fingers at the exact wrong second. That is the cost. It is paid daily. It is paid automatically. Whether or not you are watching the account. None of this is a verdict on your character. It is a systems diagnosis. And unlike a verdict, a system can be redesigned. Here is the next 90 days. Days 1 through 30. The Three of Pentacles. This card is not solo work. It is collaboration, apprenticeship, building with people who can see angles you cannot see in yourself. Remember the knight from the basement? The directness you fired years ago? The exercise? Rehearse him in the lowest stakes room available. Not your boss, not your partner. A stranger, a service interaction, a small disagreement that genuinely doesn't matter. Say the true thing once a day for 30 days. Only in rooms where the cost of being wrong is close to zero. You are not becoming someone new. You are giving an old, exiled employee a probation period to prove she is safe to rehire at full pay. Running in parallel, same 30 days, the Eight of Pentacles. Unglamorous, repetitive skill building. Keep one page, physical paper, not a notes app, and at the end of each day, write a single sentence. Where did I outsource my own resourcing to someone else today? And what would it have looked like to keep 10% of it for myself? You are not journaling feelings. You are auditing one specific leak daily until the pattern becomes visible enough to interrupt in real time. Days 31 through 60. The Sun. This is the exposure phase, and exposure here means precision, not theatrics. Choose one person, exactly one, who is safe enough to tell the truth to, and tell them the actual repressed want in plain language. Not the socially acceptable version, the real one. I want more money than feels comfortable to admit out loud. I want to be recognized specifically for this. I want to stop being the reliable one for a while. The Sun's function is not performance. It is removing the shadow's primary fuel source, which is secrecy. Parallel track,
the 10 of Wands. Build a literal list of every obligation you are currently carrying that was never formally assigned to you. The favors, the unpaid emotional labor, the someone has to do it tasks. Choose 3. Hand them back, decline them outright, or simply stop performing them. This is not about becoming less generous. It is about discovering how much capacity was buried under unrequested overhead and reclaiming that capacity as working capital instead of background noise. Days 61 through 90. The 9 of Pentacles. The card of self-sufficiency that is actually earned, not merely performed for an audience. Take one resource you've been managing primarily for everyone else. Money, time, attention, expertise. And for 30 straight days, allocate a fixed, non-negotiable percentage of it to yourself first, before any of it reaches anyone else's request. This single structural change is usually the exact point where a repressed trait first converts into something you can actually spend. Parallel, the Fool. Take one action inside this window that carries real, visible stakes. A pitch, an application, a conversation you have delayed for a year. Somewhere you could plausibly be seen failing. The Fool's value here is not recklessness. It is recalibrating your relationship to exposure, proving directly to your own nervous system that visibility is survivable, even when it doesn't go perfectly.
The 6 of Wands is not where you start. It is what you are building toward. Recognition that arrives because you finally stopped hiding, not because you finally became enough. You were always enough. You were simply unaudited. Here is the redefinition I promised you at the start. Your shadow is not the enemy. It is not the dark twin some healing industrial complex needs you to defeat so you can finally feel whole. Your shadow is unaudited capital. It has been sitting there, accruing interest, in a currency you stopped checking years ago, on a statement you stopped opening. You do not need to defeat it. You need to read the statement, claim what's yours, and start spending an inheritance you were always, technically, already holding. If something in this reading found a precise nerve rather than a general one, that precision was the point. Read the pinned comment below. Answer it honestly, even if only to yourself.